Hey, what is up, PlusUltraFam? Welcome to podcast number 22. Hashtag PlusUltraFam shoutouts to Mega Crow 12, Sheerden Road, Simon or Bald, Dancing Chips Ahoy, Chartist Node, Mikoto the Great Sage, Icy Hot Toto, Doko 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 Doko, Moses Schrock, and Geo Kit. Unfortunately, this is a really long script, so we do not have time to do any interesting comments for the last podcast. And you've read the title and the thumbnail, so let us jump right back into our story. Chun-Li straight out the World Martial Arts Tournament, where she'd seen the height of power through both Ryu and Goku's bout, and soon Goku's master Jackie Chun would be very motivated to go and see who was the real perpetrator behind her father's disappearance and his murder. Currently, she's tracking a Dragon Ball with the Dragon Radar and using capsulized vehicles for travel. She first comes upon two Red Ribbon soldiers, or under their new creed, Shadowloo soldiers, and asks them questions about her father. But the two are just grunts, and they really don't know anything. She very easily defeats them, and decides it's better to take the Dragon Ball and keep it out of Shadowloo's hands. If all else fails, she could simply summon Shenron once again, and ask him who exactly is responsible for her father's disappearance and subsequent death. Like in canon, one of these grunts will radio to Colonel Silver, who would run outside and using a bazooka, aim at Chun-Li. Quick note here, the Red Ribbon Army generals or high command people will stay in their same positions, all except for Commander Red. Since M. Bison, the leader of Shadowloo, would have taken over the Red Ribbon Army, I feel like he would really only dethrone the top dog there so that he's in charge now and no one else. They'll be really good grunts for him. Now, with his bazooka, I'm not sure if Silver would be able to make his shot, as he was really only able to hit Goku in canon since he was on the Nimbus. Here, Chun-Li would probably be on a motorbike or something, and that would be a much harder shot for him to make. That said, there was a cliffside nearby, and since Silver was able to move quick enough to steal Goku's bag, let's say he gets to the top of the mountain that was next to them just in time to make his shot. Just barely hearing the missile coming before it makes contact with her motorbike, Chun-Li would flip off of the bike and rush back towards Silver at incredible speed. Remember, she was listed at a power level of 100 last time, stronger than Goku was in his base form at this point in canon. With her speed, Chun is able to quickly disarm and subdue Silver, and demands he give her information. But just before the man is about to crack under the scary woman's threats, a gunshot goes off and he slumps to the ground. Chun screams in rage, trying to find the culprit of murder. He looks to see two women standing not far off, both clad in dark blue skin-tight bodysuits with a strange yellow tie-like feature on their chest and gauntlet-like red gloves on their arms. While Chun-Li can't expertly sense ki, she can sense that both of these people are stronger than the average person, but nowhere near her level, and it's obvious that they don't know who they're dealing with. I'll be giving them both a power level of around 40, so their powers combined are only an eighth of Chun's. But as they enter the fight, their strange tactical training and robotically precise teamwork help them to stay in the fight. One of these women had blonde hair and a bob cut, and the other had brown hair, and when Chun would get them to speak, they would not say much else but target acquired, very robotic sentences. Their strange combat techniques keep them in the fight for a good amount of time, just by using diversionary techniques and pot shots, which actually pushes Chun to give in a lot more effort than she really needs to. She finally finds an opening while seeing both her opponents leap towards her. She times a helicopter kick just in time and is able to deflect and defeat both of them with one blow, knocking them both back and nearly unconscious. She quickly tries to restrain them in hopes of interrogating them, but using the blonde as a sacrifice, the brunette makes a run for it, dropping some of the flashbang grenades she has and making off in a capsulized jet. Furious, Chun-Li begins to charge with a very rudimentary ki blast, her first one ever actually. But just before she decides to make the shot and take out the jet, she sees the face of her father and Goku, realizing that neither want her to do such a thing. The organization Shadowloo must be given trial and sent to prison. That's the just and fair punishment in this situation. She would spend a while from there trying to get the mystery assailant to talk, but I think it'd be completely impossible to get one of the dolls from Street Fighter to talk. In lieu of this, I think that Chun-Li would realize that normal law enforcement can't hold someone of her skill and power, and tying her up and using a capsule jet to flee towards the next Dragon Ball would be her next move. Hopefully while there, she could get someone else in the organization to break and give her more information on where to actually find the headquarters and leader of Shadowloo. On the way there, the doll could try to escape, causing Chun to crash as Goku and the robot did in canon, and the two could still be found by Shinnok, being brought back to her house as Goku was and nursed back to somewhat of good health. As they are not Saiyans, it's possible that long exposure to the cold could really hit them a lot harder than it did Goku in canon though. As she's stronger and probably just in better overall shape, Chun-Li is affected a bit less than the doll is. So with her prisoner rendered incapable of fighting, I think she would leave her with Sinnoh's family to be nursed back to full health, while she would go and try and storm Muscle Tower. Meanwhile, the story would start to match up with canon as Chun successfully storms the tower, and it's even easier for her than it was for Goku in canon. Though I believe situations like with the Murasaki brothers would probably go a lot worse for them. Thankfully, this is still Chun-Li and she has a very strong sense of justice, so her whole thing is restraining goons and leaving them to be later handed over to the proper authorities. Unknown to her, the other doll that escaped would have called into Shadaloo headquarters and informed them of the loss of a Dragon Ball, the enemy having a radar, and the description of strength, as well as the fate of her partner, Junie. Interested in this, the leader of Shadaloo, M. Bison, decides to send out his assassin, Vega, as well as a few more of his dolls, to take out or retrieve the captured Junie. Which dolls I don't think really matters exactly. From here, at Chun's strength, I think it would go pretty easy for her in Muscle Tower, just like I've been saying, and a lot of stuff just matches up with canon. There's no real need to mention it, like she would still probably form a bond with Android 8, and those two would become allies throughout this. Ader would then lead Chun-Li up to General White's office, where the general is not by himself. Vega and two of the dolls are with them. Now, because of her speed, I don't think that General White would try and sick Booyan on Chun-Li in this timeline, meaning we just don't see him and he kind of just stays in his cave. Instead, White, Vega, and the dolls would try to take on Chun and Ader. Vega would likely be stronger than the dolls, to the point I'd actually place him in the high 60s to low 70s, at the lowest. Street Fighter characters would likely maintain similar backstories in this timeline, and Vega was sent to retrieve Kimi in canon, who was a Bison clone, meaning she was likely the strongest doll. With a fighter this powerful as well as two of the dolls at his side, Chun has just found her first real challenge on this quest. Not to mention, I don't think she'd be fully recovered from the cold just yet, so she's actually at a very big disadvantage. I personally can't decide which of the dolls will be with Vega. Remember, I am not extremely well versed in Street Fighter lore. I know enough to get by with it, and I'm trying my best here, so just imagine it is probably two of the strongest dolls that you can get, as Chun-Li is really strong here. That said, being so outnumbered in this fight, I think she'd be put on the back pedal really early on. And while this happens, General White searches for an opening and ends up hitting the already weakened Chun-Li in the back with his gun, dropping her to the ground as it knocks her unconscious instead of simply knocking out her breath. Seeing his new friend go down like this, Ader would grow even angrier than he did in canon and go on a rampage, attacking the dolls, Vega, and White, who can't do much against the mechanical man and his extremely tough body. One block would actually be enough to break Vega's claws. Remember, at this point, Goku is taking machine gun fire and shrugging it off without much damage to himself. So any gun which actually knocks his breath out of him and puts him on the ground has gotta be a really high caliber bullet. And for Ader to be able to block that without much of anything other than just his body being metal, it means he's gotta be a very durable object. Cursing at this, Vega would create a diversion and try and search Chun in the chaos to try and find her radar and the stolen Dragon Ball. But unlike Goku, Chun-Li is smart enough to know not to bring them because they could be stolen or damaged during the fight. Deeming this entire mission a complete failure, Vega decides to pull out. As Chun-Li is very beautiful, Vega would opt not to hurt her and orders the dolls to do the same as she is incapacitated. Meanwhile, back in Nam's village, Dawson, like in Street Fighter canon, is able to sense the evil of Shadaloo's leader, and he and his student Nam decide to set out and destroy such an evil since they both brought the water back in the village after the tournament. Jackie Chun could still help out, even though I don't think they would make it to the final 8 this timeline. Sensing this himself, Bison would deploy his doll, Killer B, with the mission to assassinate Dawson and Nam, but this would likely go as it did in canon, with Dawson using his abilities to release Cammy of her mind control, confusing the girl and setting her roll. As she questions what's been happening, unlike in Street Fighter canon, I think that Nam and Dawson will be able to convince her to stay with them and learn yoga so that she may learn how to free the other dolls under Bison's control. Bison would instantly feel this and grows ever angrier at all the opposition he's facing right now. He could direct Vega and the dolls with him to go and locate Cammy and bring her back to Shadaloo. With Chun, she'd have finally awoken at Sanoa's house and said goodbye to Ader and the residents of Jingle Village. Now back to full health along with the still silent Junie, who has mostly gotten over her pneumonia, she would use her jet and the two set out towards the next nearest Dragon Ball, which happens to be extremely close near Kami House. Getting an idea, Chun-Li decides to pay a visit there, and against her better judgment, she will leave Junie there as well. I believe that Chun would genuinely ask Roshi to do nothing inappropriate and instead simply help her get information from the doll. Remember here, the Dragon Radar wasn't damaged, and Chun isn't actually after the Dragon Balls. She already has 2, which is going to allow her to impede Shadaloo from making a wish. So now her only goal is to find the Shadaloo headquarters and storm it. Respecting his student, Roshi would do his best to read Junie's mind, and he is able to discover some of her past, as he did with Nam and Cannon about his village. Though sadly, I do not think he'd be able to glean the exact location of the Red Ribbon base, but definitely more info on who is behind all of this, M. Bison. I imagine Adair wouldn't have tons of information on him since Shadaloo recently took over the Red Ribbon Army. With this happening, I can still see forces attacking Kame House, but in this situation, a stronger Roshi, Krillin, and Chun-Li are here to defend themselves very easily. Chun could then have an interrogation with the Grunts, who wouldn't have the same mental toughness as the dolls, and finally is given a location on M. Bison. Her next destination is his headquarters, but Roshi would stop her as she's being way too hot-headed, and would warn her that this M. Bison was way out of her league from what he was able to glean, and he would decide that he and Krillin would accompany her. Meanwhile, General Blue would search for the Dragon Balls in the area where he and his men would likely be wiped out by booby traps, and soon the pirate robot, failing completely at retrieving the Dragon Ball. This puts Bison in a dilemma. His forces are really spread out far. Balrog and Sagat are also searching for Dragon Balls somewhere, so he has no choice of subordinates right now. The dolls remaining with him would likely be the ones who aren't as combat ready as the others, and from what he is sensing, he will soon have company, to which he's going to need some fighters. Right now, his entire plan of gathering the Dragon Balls to wish to know who in the world was the strongest fighter of them all was going horribly wrong. And as such, Commander Red, or the former Commander Red, mentions the services of mercenary Tao, secretly hoping the assassin will be willing to take out Bison for the right price so he may usurp him. The only reason Red is still alive in this timeline? He can be a good servant to Bison. And with no other option, I think that Bison would tell Red to get him into contact with this mercenary Tao, ASAP. And with Chun-Li's last known position being Kame House, and the Dragon Ball still being there, he would assume that the girl herself had stopped there and was still there, and would send Tao after them at Kame House. With Shin being stronger in this timeline, I think this would also travel down to Tao, making him stronger, and this would also make his travel by pillar even faster. He ends up traveling towards Kame House as our heroes fly towards the home base, and the two actually would pass each other, not even realize what they just did. Tao would arrive at Kame House and ransack it, looking for his targets, likely only finding Junie, who I imagine he'd either leave alive or inform Bison of her whereabouts. But seeing as his base has been found out, I could really see Bison ordering her death right now. Chun-Li, Roshi, and Krillin would arrive to Shadaloo base, where Roshi can easily feel the power of M. Bison, and is a bit surprised as he thinks he may have found an opponent similar to Akuma by the feel of their ki. The trio will begin storming the base just as Goku did in canon, and to similar results. Tao would soon arrive back to headquarters though, and confronts the group, explaining to them unless they can double the fee that M. Bison was going to pay him, then they would die today. Wary of Tao's reputation, Roshi orders Chun-Li and Krillin to take him on together, and leave Bison to him. Chun isn't very happy about this, but her master assures her that he will not kill Bison, and will make sure that she can bring him to justice and question him on her father's final fate. He then dashes off. What follows will be escorted by Krillin and Chun-Li to stay alive against this even more powerful Tao Pai Pai. I think of this timeline, as it exists here, Tao could be on the very precipice of unlocking abilities with the Satsui no Hado, but there is just one barrier that keeps him from doing so. One barrier that separates him from all the characters that I've introduced as having connections to the Dark Power so far in this timeline. Goku, Ryu, Akuma, and Bison to a small degree, since it's theorized that Psycho Power and Dark Hado have some sort of connection. These characters all desire strength for the pure desire of strength, while Tao's greed is more based towards money and worldly possessions. He just cannot separate himself from the desire for pure power with the desire for more power and money as a whole. And because of this, I do not think that he could fully access powers of the Satsui no Hado, though his ki may have trace amounts of it in it. Where in canon, I would usually list Tao at a power level of around 100. In this timeline, I think a 160 is very well deserved by him. Krillin and Chon would do everything they can, but there is a very obvious difference between these three in terms of experience as well as power. The Dodonpa alone was proving extremely dangerous. Unlike with Goku and canon, who was weaker than these two are now, they could at the very least endure a hit from the beam, but it won't feel good, and they surely can't do it more than once or twice. 3 hits would definitely kill them. Meanwhile, Roshi, deciding to hold nothing back, is running through the base so fast that purely his speed is enough to pull soldiers off their feet and incapacitate them. He would rush into Bison's office in a blur of orange and blue. The excess wind from his speed will be enough to knock the former Commander Red against a wall and completely unconscious. From here, Master Roshi and Bison would strike up a small conversation and drop into their stances as they prepare to fight. Once again, Roshi in this timeline is really strong, from having 2 masters and having 3 extremely powerful training partners when he was coming up. Remember, last part he was listed at a full power level of 280, but in this timeline I'll be placing Bison at a power level of 265 in his current body, which is dying due to his own psycho power. But with that power, it's about a dead even fight as it begins and the ground begins to constantly tremble from the force. And once again, hang in there with me because my Street Fighter lore is very weak. But remember that Bison was able to take on and defeat a Ryu who was recognized by an Akuma who was casually punching islands apart. Not to mention Akuma here is also stronger. And in the Dragon world, it's easier to grow in strength as well, as Bison's use of Ki would probably be sped up and probably made better because of his psycho powers and things like that. So he'd probably be growing at a very similar rate to how Akuma did. I will still put forth that Akuma is the strongest fighter on Earth at the moment, but these 2 are at the very least 2nd and 3rd. Sensing this battle, warriors across the Earth take notice and they shudder in fear. Goku and Ryu, who have been traveling and training together all this time, instantly drop their current sparring match and decide to go and investigate what on Earth is happening. Meanwhile, Dalsum, Nam, and Kami decide now is the time to go and free the dolls, as well as help whoever it is who is currently fighting Bison. We would also see that together, these 3 have easily defeated Vega and the dolls sent after them. And I could see them having their brainwashing wiped away, while Vega refusing any such turncoating with remaining loyal to Bison and Shadowloo and runs away. Meanwhile, Ken in West City has sensed these powers as well, and he and Bulma set out, while Balrog and Sagat ventured to finish collecting the last of the Dragon Balls. Everything taking place with Colonel Yellow and Bora and Upa could take place, but in this timeline I could see Bora either outsmarting the Tiger and retrieving Upa, or Upa's just taken and maybe gets killed. If Nam could jump as high as he could in canon, I don't see why Bora couldn't either, or at least a similar height, and from there he could probably just throw his spear. Yamcha and the still injured Akuma could feel this massive energy and the amazing battle going on with it. But with his Master Stone in the current state he's in, Yamcha is easily able to prevent him from going and claiming that he still needs his rest and to get back to 100%. The students of the Crane School could also feel this energy, but Tien doesn't even listen to Chaozu while he's trying to get him to explain what might be going on. Instead, he is still solely focusing intently on his training to defeat Ryu, and the feeling of these giant powers only motivates him even more. After an arduous battle, Chun-Li and Krillin would be on their last legs, and they have only gotten in so many clean hits or mercenary talent. But then, out of nowhere, Ryu and Goku drop from a jet they'd flown to the battlefield in. Remember, it hasn't been too long since the World Tournament, so neither is significantly stronger than they were then. But both are in better shape than Chun-Li and Krillin, and are stronger than them as well. And at the moment, I would still set these 2 at about dead even. Before Tao and either of the newcomers could clash, 2 more aircraft land, one carrying Bulma and Ken, and the other Nam, Dalsum, and Kami. Outnumbered, Tao would curse at this waste of money and time and retreat. Unfazed by this, Kami hopes to use a small amount of yoga she's learned to free the dolls and runs off to search for them inside the most destroyed base. Nam and Dalsum telling her to wait before falling after her to make sure she's okay. And with that, everyone else is confused and begin doing the same. Ken, Ryu, and Goku carry Chun-Li and Krillin as they're much too tired to walk. They'd quickly find that Kami and Dalsum have successfully freed the dolls to remain at the base from their mind control. But soon, the near constant shaking of the area and the clashing of huge keys ends. Bison's power is the only one still felt, and for some odd reason, it's gotten much bigger. Scared and confused, our heroes run to find the source of the energy, only to find the rest of the base destroyed and exposed to the elements, out in the open. Master Roshi stands over the bruised and battered body of Bison, which currently sported a huge hole in the torso from his Kamehameha wave. But something wasn't right. Bending down, Roshi's body picks up Bison's hat and places it on his own head, as well as doing the man's cape right off his dead body. Speaking in Roshi's body, Bison welcomes all these powerful warriors to his former home. He further laments his hastiness with possessing this old man's body, now knowing of Ryu and Goku and how they have much more enticing powers and much bigger potentials. Still confused, the heroes demand an explanation, and Bison proudly proclaims that he has stolen the body of Master Roshi. The heroes demand that Bison let Roshi go, but Bison has no interest in killing them just yet. He proposes a deal. In around 3 years' time from this moment, they can meet him in the next World Martial Arts tournament and defeat him. If they won, he'd release Roshi and disband Shadaloo forever. But if he won, he would take over the loser's body, and from there, world domination would be much more simple than what it already was. But he could already tell, with this old man's power, he could own the world. That said, he wanted the best body possible, and he could now see that one of those bodies was in front of him. Before anyone could protest, the possessed turtle hermit began to float away, preparing to leave, but not before teasing Chun-Li by admitting to her father's murder when something happened and his flight wavered. Roshi's body crashes back to the ground, and the hermit struggles to speak in his own voice as he wrestles control away from him Bison. He is able to get out a single sentence: "Remember the way of the turtle school and seek out Master Corn." And soon his eyes will glow purple once again, and the old man will fly away faster than anyone could follow. Devastated, Goku grits his teeth and vows to save his master, as does all his friends. But that gave rise to the question of who is Master Corn. Dalton would interrupt and tell the story of Corn's tower, explaining that in his journey to spread the art of yoga, he met a guardian by the name of Bora and attempted to climb the tower of Corn, yet was unable to do so. He offers to show everyone who wished to go to the tower in the hopes of defeating Bison. Goku, Ryu, and Ken would be very fired up to leave right this minute, but the tired Chun-Li would ask her friends to please wait and help her arrest and round up the defeated members of the Rebel Army so they could go to a jail and serve out proper sentences. But as this is said, two somewhat powerful keys are felt, and two blonde men enter the area, claiming themselves as commanders Guile and Charlie Nash of the King's Guard, or Royal Defense Army, the Earth's military. The heroes explain themselves and the situation, and I think that Guile and Charlie would decide to allow the team to go and train until only King Furry of what had come of Shadaloo. The less panic there was about the organization, the better most likely. Meanwhile, Bison would call out to his remaining forces and inform them to give up on the search for the Dragon Balls, as he's already found out that he will attain the strongest body possible if he only waits 3 years. One with much more potential than Akuma. Balrog would be furious at this, while Sugai would be very curious who could this body belong to. Before the heroes would depart, Kami would opt to go and find and free the rest of the remaining dolls, causing Guile to mention that joining the military would help her do this, which she accepts full-heartedly. With her help, they will track Bison down again and take him down for good. Chun would mention that one of the dolls is currently at Kame House, and Kami and the military would set off actually finding her dead body, and possibly to find the Dragon Balls and retrieve them so they can revive Junie, as she was technically innocent in this entire situation. Kami and Guile would set out to do so as Charlie and the dolls returned to base. With everything else settled, Dawson would guide the rest of our heroes to the foot of Corn's tower, and would decide to return to Nam's village. Nam would decide to return with him, as he has to finish his yoga training, but one day he will climb the tower and surpass his master. Bulma would wish Ken good luck and return to West City. Once Chun-Li and Krillin felt better, Ken, Ryu, Chun-Li, Goku, and Krillin would begin climbing the tower. It would be difficult, but I think the 5 could make it for sure, and they would be okay once they got up there at least. They would reach the top and meet Corn, who reads their minds and agrees to help them with training, but they'd be doing it one at a time. He's gonna have them each try and catch him so they may drink the water, which would secretly give them no power boost. But to keep this hidden, Corn introduced the stipulation that their trainees couldn't drink until they had all been captured. This meant that there was somewhat of a time limit here. Thankfully, Corn said nothing about the others using his area to train and spar as they pleased while they waited on their other friends to finish catching Corn and move on for the next person's turn. I think I'll say Goku, being the most eager, would go first, followed by Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, and then Krillin, with each catching the Cat Master within different amounts of time. That said, I don't think Goku would do it any faster than 3 days in this timeline. I realize that he is stronger, but I could number 1 see Corn possibly being stronger as well, and number 2, I could see Goku not being in anywhere near as big of a rush as he was in canon to revive Bora. I think making it take about 5 days or maybe even a week in this timeline is more than fair enough. For Ryu and the other humans, the task is not so easy. The days begin stretching into weeks, the weeks into months, and before long, nearly all the 3 years have passed, but thankfully all the Turtle School members have at this point caught Corn and gotten much stronger. They would all go on to collectively take a drink of the water, and they feel no different. But Korn has them all jump down and climb back up the tower, knowing that they can all do it in under 30 minutes or so, which was very impressive. The world would not be completely still during this time, however. Akuma would be back up and running at this point and training extremely hard as he knows that something big is on its way. And Bison would continue to affect Roshi's body with his psycho power, taking more and more control of it. Junior would have been revived as well, and from here, it would be time to head to the next World Tournament with a goal in mind. That said, I think it'd be safe to move through some of these events extremely quickly, partly because I really want to hurry this story on a bit, and whatever I could add in from here would just be way more detailed fight descriptions, which they aren't necessarily, 100% necessary for a podcast with. I could see this being a huge tournament, like really huge. Street Fighter characters, Dragon Ball characters, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, anybody you really want here, they're probably going to be in this tournament. The only people who I'd say, or the only person I'd say who just isn't here is, strangely enough, Akuma. I see the tournament going down with the M. Bison possessed Roshi flying through the prelims and further decimating every opponent he faces until being a confirmed finalist. Bison along with the 5 Turtle School students, and as a big shocker, Yamcha and Tien would make it to the final 8. I won't focus on individual fights because we don't have enough time here, so let's imagine that Ryu and Tien finally have a rematch where Tien, like in canon, is shown the error of his ways, but he is still defeated. That's the only fight I'm 100% concrete on really having here. I think on one side of the bracket it would come down to Bison being the finalist, while on the other side, as predictable and as lazy as this is, it would come down to either Goku and Ryu having to face off again with Bison based on whoever won their next match, even though this was pretty much done last time. I could see the two friends giving it their all, and remember, they've been pretty much neck and neck, and I don't see a decent reason to change that now, even after Korn's training. But with the desperation of knowing that his master's life is on the line, I think that Goku would fall to his darkness first, as he accesses the Satsui no Hado and the battle ramps up as the two channel more and more murderous energy as a pretty much positive feedback loop is established. As one uses more and more of their rage and murder to tend on the other, the same will happen to the next one, and so on and so forth, until they just become monsters. At this point, what had been a match between two old friends has now become a bitter death match between two rivals. But I think Goku would have a much more natural affinity with this energy, and so would overpower Ryu once again, defeating him. The older martial artist would be furious, but right now what matters to him is saving Master Roshi. As Bison and Goku face off in the finals, the 15-year-old is still leaking murderous red energy as the referee calls for the match to begin. Before getting out of the way, either competitor can't really do anything as there is a big red flash. Bison's body would drop, and standing over him is Akuma. The demon quickly kicks Roshi's dead body out of the ring, as Goku registers what had just happened, and Ken jumps up to catch his master's lifeless body, also yelling in anguish as he realizes what is going on. Goku would then roar out in pure fury, as tears drop from his eyes before his pupils disappear and become completely white. A dark red aura surrounding him as his hair became the same shade of red as Akuma's and raised up on end, almost like we know as a Super Saiyan. Finally finding his challenge, Akuma and Goku would clash, and they begin to battle the likes of which the world has never seen. Akuma had been the strongest for a very long time, but Goku, when like this, was definitely his equal. No, his better. The demon had finally found his match. Goku was a killing machine, listening to no one, paying attention only to the goal of knocking Akuma's head off. The wind from his punches began to blow through the stands and harm innocent bystanders. Akuma would be elated as he felt Goku's blows grow stronger and stronger with his anger as he fed on more and more of it. That is until a cough was heard and the body of Master Roshi set up. With the sensu being provided from Chun-Li and Bison's soul fleeing from the Master's body after nearly being torn apart by Akuma, it has opened the gate for Master Roshi to retake control over his body. Seeing this, the dark Hado from Goku would instantly fade away, and with tears in his eyes, the boy runs off the stage to hug his miraculously surviving master. Confused and frightened, the referee would then name Akuma the winner of the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai by default. Yamcha would approach his master and try to get him to let this fight go. He'd been given his challenge and he'd won. Could he finally stop being the way he was? What more was there? But Akuma, consumed by his need to fight, would only grow more and more angry, and would nearly take the former bandit's head off for saying this. Reacting, and with Akuma in terrible shape after his fight with Goku, Ryu and Ken intercept this attack and save Yamcha, and declare that they will finish the demon off if he so desires revenge that much, as revenge for their master Goken. Akuma grins at the prospect. Before a deathmatch can actually start, Akuma's fight with Goku takes a huge toll on him, and he collapses due to all the damage that Goku has inflicted on his body. All Akuma could do was lay there and growl and snarl at Ryu and Ken to come and fight him. But when he was like this, he was too pitiful to fight, too pitiful to finish off. Helping those who are injured, our heroes leave the World Tournament arena, this day victorious. Days later, after fully recuperating, Ryu, Tien, Chaozu, and Goku decide that they want to set off for more training, the latter two with the goal of fully surpassing Goku for good, while Goku and Ryu are tired of this and want to seek a way to rid themselves of the Dark Hado. They are approached by Dalsum Nam. Dalsum claims that he thinks he can help them through training them in yoga, and even if he can't, he was going to have Nam, who is finished with his yoga training, investigate something once he completed his goal of climbing Korin's tower. In a mysterious area, Akuma growls, fully healed from his battle with Goku, and grumbles to himself as he looks down at the device. He thinks back to Goku and his refusal to use the Dark Hado. He then proclaims that if he can't make his own demons to fight, then he knows someone who can. He holds up an old rice cooker and grins. But that's where we're going to be leaving the story for right now, you guys. I know the story is kind of jumping around a lot and it's not as in-depth as a lot of people would like it to be. I'm very sorry. It's just that with a concept this interesting, I can really go off the rails and write something extremely long, and I'm not going to be able to get podcast gameplay for it in time, and this one's going to come out really late, and there's a lot of factors that just keep this one from being as long as I want it to be. But I do think that the next one will be a good amount of time. I definitely want to do a third part of this that goes more into the stuff that you see in Dragon Ball Z and not just the more simple martial arts stuff that you see in Dragon Ball, where the Dragon Ball and Street Fighter stories kind of match up, better. I want to go to the, really cool space opera stuff and see what happens there. What can we really do with that stuff? So at some point we will investigate those themes and those concepts, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. So yeah, if you know Street Fighter better than I do, if I messed something up here, if I could have done something better, definitely let me know in the comment section below. If you have your own what if suggestions, please comment them down in the comment section using hashtag #PlusUltraFam. At this point, I've told you guys how to do it enough times. Please do. The only rules I'm going to give you guys: if you have a My Hero Academia suggestion, please try and think of something other than what if Deku had a different power or a different quirk or a different weapon or something like that. Just something different. There are tons of things you can do with My Hero. I know the story isn't done yet. I know it's still in its infancy. I know a lot of you are only anime only, so you can only think of so many things, but please just try. With Naruto stories, suggest them. Those are a bit easier to do. I just do kind of get sick of what if Naruto had such and such kick the Genkai, stuff like that. But I mean, if we do it. And with Dragon Ball stories, just introduce more of them. Suggest more Dragon Ball scenarios. I'd love to do more Dragon Ball scenarios. I'd love to do more My Hero scenarios in the podcast. I think the podcasts are where I do some of my best kind of wacky stuff and my really crazy ideas, so that my normal what ifs can kind of have maybe small things or bits from these really crazy things, and it's a really cool fun exercise for me to do to keep my mind really sharp and really creative in writing these stories really well. I'll stop rambling, you guys. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, go beyond, plus ultra. See you guys next time.